Before viewing a film, we often have a sense of whether the film is factual or purely fiction. Moviegoers often expect documentary films to show real people and places, not blockbuster actors playing characters in towns that don't exist. However, some fictional films are based around actual events or the lives of real people. What sets documentary films apart from these fictional films based in truth? And where did documentary film begin? One could try and trace the origins of documentary film back to the beginning of cinema itself. Early films from the Lumiere brothers and others conveyed a sense of what the world was like and how people lived their lives. These first films had what John Grierson referred to as documentary value, but they were not themselves documentaries. Instead, they were laying the groundwork for the whole of cinema. Nichols identifies 4 key elements that form the basis for the documentary film, including indexical documentation, poetic experimentation, narrative storytelling, and rhetorical address. Another trait that separates fictional films from documentary films is that documentaries are often labeled as such. Filmmakers try and tell their audiences that their movie is meant to document an event or a group of people ahead of time. They do so through the publicity and press coverage of the film before its release. This, in turn, helps reinforce the idea that audiences should be trusting that the movie they are about to watch is factual. We then expect that the persons, places, and events shown on screen exist or existed at some point. Across the history of film, documentaries have presented themselves as factually trustworthy, yet they are often challenged as inaccurate representations of events. Looking at some of the earliest documentary films, it is clear that the line between fact and fiction is rather blurry. Documentary filmmakers often staged reenactments or create scenes to convey a particular perspective. For example, Robert Flathery created the impression that some of the scenes in Nanook of the North took place within a small igloo. In fact, Flathery filmed in the open air with half of an oversized igloo backdrop behind his actors. This technique was necessary as the camera equipment was too big to fit inside of a real igloo. It also allowed Flathery to shoot outside with enough light to capture the film. However, the film subjects had to pretend that they were still inside of a small igloo when, in reality, they were not. Furthermore, Flathery's film inaccurately depicts the lives of the Inuit tribe Nanook of the North centers around. Nanook was not the real name of Flathery's protagonist, and although he was an actual hunter, the tribe had long ditched spear hunting for the much more effective gun. Flathery was not the only person to take creative liberty within a documentary. Night Mail also has examples of staged scenes. The film gives audiences a sense of the overnight express mail train's speed as it barrels across England heading toward Scotland, carrying sacks of letters along with it. Similar to Flathery's creative approach around filming within an igloo, many of the interior mail sorting scenes were shot on a soundstage and not on the actual train. Instances like this allow documentary filmmakers to control parts of what they film to convey the perspective of their subject effectively. By staging scenes, directors are able to capture cleaner and more interesting visuals for their films. Unfortunately, taking such creative liberties is not always received well by audiences or critics. Some believe documentary films become unreliable when the filmmakers manipulate the events that are filmed. However, most viewers can recognize some staging as legitimate as long as it serves a greater purpose in presenting accurate information. For instance, Vertov's film, Man with a Movie Camera, follows the central character of a cinematographer. Although this man's actions and the actions of several others in the film are staged, none of the subjects perform activities they would not do in a typical day. In the end, it's safe to assume documentaries are not true reproductions of historical events, but instead they are representations of the things that happened. Documentary filmmakers often make creative decisions through filming and editing to convey their message or perspective on a set of circumstances or a group of people. However, viewers must remain critical of such creative liberties and not take everything on the screen for face value.